What a very interesting day it's been on the program today with Coach Carter, Kim Coates, the sports doctor, and now the CFL's number one insider, Justin Dunk, joining us from Southern Ontario. JD, how are you, my friend?
All right, buddy. What about you?
Oh, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if you saw the start of the show. I said my heart warmed when I saw that you were on the marquee for the show today because I want to get down with the Canada West season. You broke the story that it'll be a 5-game season. That's what teams have been told to prepare for out here for Canada West, Western Canadian University football. Can you expand on the story?
Certainly. They're still discussing whether or not they can start at the end of September or October, and whether or not a bye week is going to be built into the schedule. But as it stands now, with some positivity, it seems like around the country in terms of the economy reopening slowly, that there is at least a plan in place for them to play a 5-game regular season schedule, as you mentioned, 2 semifinals and the Hardy Cup. So the playoffs would stay the same, and it seems like it would either start the last weekend, as they said, of September or the first weekend of October.
How closely does this follow the line at all of NCAA football? Because you're following it closely. You see what they're saying down there. There will be no outside conference play, or if the campuses aren't open, they won't be playing football at all. Is there a reasonable comparison at all to Canada versus what they're doing in America?
That's exactly literally what they're discussing in Canada as well. I've heard that there's potential just to have the conferences play within the Canada West, within the UA, within the RSEQ, and within the Atlantic, and we might not have a Vanier Cup, sad to say. Those are still ongoing, but as you mentioned as well, it's also going to depend. Are the campuses open? Are there actual classes going on? Are students either physically on campus or taking virtual classes? So those decisions have to be made before we nail down some dates for a season.
What do you think the chances are, Justin, of Canada West football happening?
It seems like they're positive about it. So, right now, obviously the coronavirus presents some uncertainty, but I would think I would put the chances at 60-40 to the good.
Now, I'm with you. I appreciate the optimism. So to the CFL and what you're hearing out of there this week, what's the latest as we sit here today on any CFL-related topics, by the way? Because we can go down the federal aid route. We can do a draft recap. What's hot right now, I guess, at 3 down?
Well, actually, we just had the TV ratings come in from the draft coverage on TSN that went up 116%, Roddy, if you can believe it. So that's hot and up on the site right now, and I think it goes to our point that you've been making for a while now to expand the draft coverage, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. I think there would have been an opportunity there for them to go longer than the 2 hours they did. That said, it was a solid broadcast considering the restrictions that you have with Farhan Lalji out in BC and Dwayne Ford in Mississauga, just to name a couple of the guys that were on the broadcast. So we have those numbers up on the site. Also, the comparison from a Canadian standpoint, the CFL draft TV ratings to the NFL draft TV ratings. And then as far as the season goes, one of the latest possibilities that I've heard is the season could start as late as, are you ready for it? October, which means the Grey Cup would have to be shifted to December.
But still be in Saskatchewan?
That is still to be determined. They're looking at playing in one center potentially out west and one center in the east if they had to go to that model. And I think within that, they would still have to decide, all right, what is the best case scenario in terms of playing the Grey Cup?
By the way, just to the draft coverage, because you and I are both media junkies, I think anybody that's hard on TSN is being unfair. I mean, it didn't look a whole lot different than the NFL to me. They didn't have the cameras set up in the players' living rooms, which I get, but they're also not ESPN. I thought they did a solid job. Now, you're probably following that same Ohio University sports information guy that said the draft was boring. If you were following his Twitter, he's like, why is nobody drafting Nathan Rourke? Does nobody need a quarterback? It's like, you just don't understand how this works. And from an excitement perspective, I thought it was a pretty exciting night, to be honest with you.
It really was, because when you consider the fact that Calgary had been out there looking for offers for the number 1 overall pick, and that trade didn't actually go down until TSN came on the air, really made it intriguing. And then I think more people were tuning in, as you sort of alluded to, with the allure of a Canadian quarterback being picked early in the draft. Now, I will tell you, there were teams that considered picking Rourke in the first round. I got to do a little bit more digging, but they are really feeling that Rourke has the potential, and obviously he went to the BC Lions in the second round, to be a potential franchise in the CFL.
I know the Lions are really excited. They're happy with their draft. Anybody can declare their winners or losers, whatever. The Lions are happy, and I really think that they should be. But I got to back up. You said something about a center in the East and a center in the West. Can you dig a little more into what you're hearing there in terms of playing games? Is this a bubble city scenario?
Possibly, and we've heard it been talked about in the NBA where teams might end city, or the NHL, obviously looking at those options as well. And it's something that the CFL is talking about. What I've heard in terms of the latest is there's about 12 different scenarios the league has put together in their planning, and that among them, they're looking at playing in those centers that possibly have a smaller amount of coronavirus cases, because that would obviously help you from a safety perspective.
Wow, there's a lot of information there. Anything else before we get to the Korean baseball organization?
I will say, guys, that just on the Rourke side, I've been trying to track down, who were those teams that were considering taking him in the first round. I'll have more info for that as we go along here. That'll be up on 3 Down Nation. And one interesting tidbit I can give you regarding the Riders and their first round selection, Matlin Riley, is that, no slight to him at all, but he actually wasn't the highest ranked player on their board at the time of the pick. So potentially some intrigue there as to why Riley went 7 over guys that were actually still available and on the board. I'll dig into it.
Do you think that was the local angle?
I'm sure that played in, as you know, Roddy. If it's close, they like to go local, but some of the other players that I've been hearing that they were looking at were above, had a better ranking than Riley. But I think when you factor in the local angle and the fact that they wanted to get younger on the offensive line, and Jeremy O'Day being a former offensive lineman as well, and knowing how important that is, that's what sort of tipped the decision to Riley. But it was up in the air.
Awesome. Interesting story to follow for sure. Now let's bring DuPont in on this. I'm told that you have a Korean baseball team to follow. Who's your rooting interest, Justin Dunk?
I'm going with the Heroes, man. That name just spoke to me.
It spoke to you. I got to make a note here. The Heroes. Nobody has picked the Heroes yet, so I'm putting JD down beside the Hero. We're all getting a team here. I love it. By the way, I'm not sure. They won last night, by the way. They beat the Tigers 3-2, Justin. So you are getting on board with the right team. What do you think?
I love it. We'll put if you see on my Instagram story, JD, we got our faces up on the little standings board here in the studio. So I'll put your face up by the Kiwoom Heroes. And I was just
Kiwoom, let's do it, baby.
Rod,
what do you got?
I got some SK Wyverns and Hanwha Eagles merch on the way. couple of hoodies on the way.
Go Wyverns. Go Wyverns. All right. Justin, I appreciate it. Canada's Adam Schefter. I hope you're having as much fun as it seems like you're doing. These are exciting times. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Roddy. You guys too. And hey, we should maybe put a little fun wager on our Korean teams here. We've got to come up with something.
Next visit, I'm all over it. Let's do it. Thanks, Justin.
See you guys.
Justin Dunk from 3downnation.com, Canada's foremost CFL insider. Give him a follow on Twitter at jdunk12.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.